Hey everyone, this is Aditya from Finsweet. In today's video, we're going to talk about syncing data from Airtable to Webflow using Nobull.
Hey everybody, I'm Rohan from Finsweet. Please remember that the app that we are showing today is still in beta.
That's effing sweet.
As you know, we are today going to talk about connecting Airtable to your Webflow CMS and sending data from Airtable to the Webflow CMS. And I am Aditya. I'm a Webflow developer at Finsweet. I mainly work on client projects. I have Rohan with me here. He is here to assist me because he has a lot of good experience with Airtable, and he has a lot of good points to share with us as well.
Hello everybody. So I've been working on the Nobull project since a really long time. I worked on the initial version, which is currently a beta application that you can access. And then I've been working over the last year on version 2 of the current application. So in today's demo, we'll talk about the beta app.
That's right. And the process is going to look somewhat like this. We are going to set up the CMS inside of our Webflow project. And then we are going to set up our Airtable table here. And then we are going to use Nobull. We are going to install it first, and then we're going to use it so that all of the data here automatically gets transferred over to your Webflow CMS. And I want to show like a couple of examples to you so that you can know what to expect from this tutorial. So let's see. This is a client project that I have worked on before. And all of these integrations that you see here are all coming from Airtable. So this is not this was not managed in the Webflow CMS. The client has a team of like 15, 20 individuals. They didn't want to give access to all of them to their Webflow CMS. So they have an Airtable. People go in there, they add and remove integrations, and they publish, and then the change reflects on the live site. So this is a really good use case, and this is what we are going to try and replicate today. Of course, a simpler version of this. And also you can, on top of this, add Finsweet attributes to add some filtering, search, and whatnot to your content. There is one more use case. If you have Airtable forms and you want all your form submissions to go to the Webflow CMS, then again, you can do this with Nobull Airtable. We are going to create a table with some integrations. And the integrations also have a category here. So it's a multi-ref, so there can be multiple categories. So we will have two collection lists, one for integrations and one for integration categories. So I'm just going to go ahead and now create the CMS collection list. So I'm going to start with the integrations first. And a few things we're going to need. One is the name, of course. The slug is a mandatory field. We are going to need the logo. We are going to need, we're going to need a category field, but we'll create that once I create the CMS for that, collection list for that. So categories, here we just need a name, nothing else. And then I'm going to go back inside of integrations and create a multi-reference called categories, link it to categories, save. All right, so that's basically our Webflow CMS setup. Now we need to replicate this exact setup inside of Airtable. So I created an Airtable base. If you've used it before, you'll know that once you create an Airtable base and you go inside it, this is the first thing you see. You see a default table like this. So I'm just going to rename this to integrations. And I'm going to start creating some fields here. So first of all, we have name. And remember, these fields, it's best if you match the names exactly the same that we have inside of the CMS. So we have name, first of all, so that's already here. Notes, we don't need this, so I'm going to delete this. It's a default assignee, we don't need this. We'll keep status. Status is like the status of your CMS item. So we're going to keep that. I'm going to create a field for slug because slug is a field here. So we need one for that. It's going to be a single line text. Create field. And then I'm going to create an attachment field for, here we go, for the logo. So that's our name, slug, logo. And there's one more thing here, the item ID. That's another field that you definitely need to have because every item in the Webflow CMS gets an item ID assigned to it. So we're going to create single line text, item ID. We don't have to fill this. It will be generated automatically once the items get synced. Okay, so that's our integrations table setup. Now I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this table for categories.
Aditya, before you duplicate, maybe you'd like to add the status for the CMS item ID as well. Not the item
status.
ID, CMS items.
Oh,
so in the status, yeah, you open that, go to edit field.
Oh, right.
Then you can type in draft, archive.
Right. So you need to have these three archived and active.
Yes.
So you need to have these three options right here. Yep, good.
Sorry. And you could add a checkbox field called publish.
Okay, let's go ahead and create that one as well. A checkbox, publish. And you're going to know why you're doing this eventually. Okay, now I guess I can go ahead and duplicate.
Yeah.
Let's duplicate the table. I'm going to call this categories. But here we don't need the logo, so I'm going to delete that. But apart from this, we need everything else. Should we set a default option here to active?
Sure.
Yeah, I guess let's do that. So let's set the default as active. If you always want your stuff to be live ready, always you can set it as active by default. Or you can do draft to be safe. But I'm going to do active for now. Okay, so it looks like the setup here is complete. I guess we need one more field, and that is the multi-ref that we are going to link to categories. So I'm going to call it categories. I'm going to link it to the categories table. You know that you can create separate views. Like we have the grid view here. If you add more views, you could use this option to like limit this this column to a certain view, but for now I'm not going to bother with that. Let's just create that field. And we don't really need lookup fields, so I'm going to skip that. All right, so I think that's our basic setup. Should I go ahead and add the data in here first? I have some dummy data with me.
Sure.
Okay, so I'm going to do AWS, I'm going to do Salesforce, I'm going to do Okta. We'll have 6 of them. So Auth0, Cloudflare, and let's do Intercom. I'm going to add in the logos for all of them too. So I have the logos right here. The first one was AWS upload. Oh, this is going to take a minute. So that's all of our data in here. I'm also going to go ahead and write in the slug for all of them. And
Aditya, you don't necessarily need to type them in. Nobull will auto-generate them.
Okay, so that's great.
Yeah. Well, let me rephrase that. Nobull doesn't generate them. Webflow CMS does. Nobull retrieves that and then inputs it in here.
So I'm just going to remove this then, so that, you know, when you type it yourself, you could make mistakes. So, and I'm also going to create some categories. So let's say HR tools. We'll say cloud services. And we can say analytics. All right, so that's 3 categories. Let's assign some of these categories. So I'm going to do HR tools here, cloud services, and HR tools here. Analytics. And finally, HR tools. All right. So that's a pretty good looking setup. This is complete. And now I think we can move on to install Nobull. So to do that, the first thing you do is, of course, go to extensions here. And remember, again, Nobull is in beta. So yeah, it really isn't like fully out yet, but it works. And I already use it for client projects. So it's perfectly fine to use. I'm going to search for Nobull and add extension. Okay, so this is the first thing you see once you install Nobull. And of course, you have to click on New Connect here to create a new connection between your table and the Webflow CMS. So I'm going to click on New Connect. And then you can click here on the Generate API key from your Webflow account. And what this does is it just opens a new tab with all your projects from the Webflow account that you're logged in. And then you can select the project that you want to do this on, and you can generate the API key. So I'm quickly just going to stop sharing my screen for a minute here, and I'm going to do that. And then you paste your API key here and submit. Okay, so what you see now is this whole thing updates, and now you can select the project that you grabbed the API key for. So I grabbed it for this project that we have open right here. And of course, you can publish your website from here now that the API is connected, but we'll do that later. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to connect integrations to integrations, the integrations Webflow collection list to the integrations table inside of Airtable. So we select that, and then we move on to the fields. So these 3 are mandatory fields: the name, item ID, and slug. And we have columns for that in Airtable, so just need to link them. And this is where it's very helpful to make sure that your Airtable fields are named exactly the same as your Webflow fields. It's just easy to connect this way. But that's not all. We need to connect more fields. We have the logo field, so I'm going to connect the logo field to logo. Anything else? Data will be taken from Airtable. You can select Webflow here or Airtable. If you want your Webflow CMS data to be imported to Airtable, you can do that. But in this tutorial, we're going to talk about Airtable to Webflow, so I'm going to select Airtable. And update data can be done manually, like you can publish it whenever you want, or it can be any of these 3 options. But for now, I'm just going to do it manually. So I'm going to save that. And that's our integrations table connected. Now I'm going to create another new connect for the categories table. So I'm going to paste in the same API key that I grabbed a minute ago. And this time I'm going to select categories on both sides. And the same process, basically. Select the name, item ID, and slug fields. Oh, we do want to connect status to the state field, right? So I'm going to say state status, data to be taken from Airtable, manually save. I'm going to quickly go ahead and do that for the integrations table too. State, status, save. All right. This looks good. The next thing you want to definitely make sure you do is publish your Webflow site. This was published a while ago, so I'm going to go ahead and publish it again, just to make sure that everything is synced and accessible to Airtable, to Nobull. This should be a quick publish. There we go. What do you think, Rohan? Should we go ahead and publish? Do you?
Yeah,
Oh,
let's do that.
I think we forgot to create this field.
Yes, you could add that now. And the the checkbox field.
Oh, true. So I'm going to create another field mapping here for categories. And I'm going to select this categories table here.
Yeah, I'd like to mention here that it's only possible to make a link to a linked table or a multi-reference field if a connect has been created for that table. So Aditya created a connect for categories, and because he did that, he was able to link the multi-ref in here. If he hadn't, then it would not have been possible.
Okay, so here I'm going to select live item, Rohan, is that right?
That's the one.
Okay, and save it. I'm going to do the same for categories.
Sure.
Live item, publish, save. All right, I think our setup looks complete, and I'm going to go ahead and hit the publish button. And I'm going to be looking at the item ID column here. So like as things get published, they all get an item ID assigned. So
Aditya, I think it would also be nice if we could change the status of some items to, let's say, draft and archive.
Okay, let's do that here.
Yeah, and for a couple of them, we could have the checkbox ticked so we see if it's published or not. So that would work only if the status is marked active. So could you move the published checkbox field next to the status field?
Sure, let me do that. There you go.
So you've got to remove the first 3 checkboxes.
Oh,
because
right.
the live item works only with active and checkbox. Yeah.
Perfect.
You can uncheck one of them to see what happens. Okay,
great.
Fantastic.
Okay, I think we can go ahead and publish. There you go. It's creating the items one by one. So you'll see it creates 9. Oh, we have an error with the 2 items.
Okay, that's a good opportunity to find out why those 2 items received errors. So you could right click on that on the Nobull UI and then go to
inspect
and head over to console. And then you have this arrow next to Webflow error. What's the end? Yes. So what does it say? Validation failure. And then in problems, it says field categories. Referenced item not found. Okay. So this is a great use case for Nobull because as you can see, it's processed 9 items, but in integrations, we had 6 items. Nobull tried to create items from both integrations and categories, and there was a mismatch and it failed. So I would recommend to first sync just the integrations and then sync just the categories, and after that, make that multi-reference collection and sync them. So following these steps will ensure that we will not have a failed sync. Yeah, so let's do that and we'll try that again. Could you refresh your screen?
Yes. Okay, here we go.
Okay, and then, so edit integrations connect, and then delete the multi-reference field.
So this is the multi-reference. We're going to delete this.
And then save. Okay. Before we do anything else, how about we go ahead and see which ones were connected and if they did work. So I see the first 3 worked, and I think that was draft, and archive.
Yes, that was.
Okay, archive, draft, and draft. So let's go over to Webflow and see if that worked.
We also had another one active, but like the published is off. So
that would be staged for publish. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, and the 3 categories also were synced. So we
Okay,
see
good.
3 items inside categories, and we see 4 items here.
Yes, perfect. So from categories, all of them are marked staged for publish because they were tagged active. And then in integrations, we've got true draft and one archived and one staged for publish. And I think it's
Yep.
exactly the same as what we had on the Airtable.
Perfect. Yep, that's correct.
Okay. Now let's publish the connect for integrations.
Let's go ahead and publish then.
So that would be 6 records now to create it.
There we go.
Perfect. You can head over to Webflow, refresh the page, and check if that happened.
Okay, all 6 integration items are in here, and 2 of them are published.
Perfect. So all of that worked. And now we go to Nobull and make the multi-reference connection and republish the connect.
Okay, so we're gonna add a new field, mapping categories, and here we go. Okay, save.
Let's now try to publish the Webflow website.
Yep, let's do that. Should we try again now that the website is
and
published?
then we'll republish.
Okay. Oh, it worked this time.
Okay, great.
No more errors. So yeah, you should always make sure that you keep publishing your Webflow site so that Nobull has the latest instance of your site. Okay, let's move on. I think like that's pretty much the basic way to set up a connection between Airtable and Webflow.
And Aditya, I think this could be a good time for me to share my screen and share some tips about Nobull. So as Aditya was showing, when creating a new connect, he had the API key stored somewhere. So for this beta version of Nobull, we would definitely recommend that you save the Webflow API key somewhere safe and that you can reuse it for every single connect that you create. So personally, I like to use this application called Descript. And you can just type in API key for Webflow from Webflow for Nobull, and then you paste it in there. Anytime you need to create a new connect, you copy paste the API key from here. And that is one way of ensuring that the connect won't break. Second point is that I would recommend you create a dedicated view for Nobull so that there is a way wherein you can so Airtable is used to manage your data. You can have 100 items and you may want only 50 of those items to show on your Webflow website. And you can divide or categorize that information by having separate views. So let's say we'll create a single select field exactly for that. And I'll call it status. So status for Webflow. So let's say you have a large team of people working on a database and they're adding content. There may be a review process, and the content that has been accepted to publish on Webflow can have a status like that. And when you do that, we can add a filter here that says, show me items that have this status. And now in Nobull, you can select that Airtable view. So Nobull is going to sync only those items that appear in this view. If we change the status to one of them, it will now sync 5 items, not 6. So that's tip number 2. Number 3 is I would recommend that you add an emoji to help distinguish the fields that are important. Because while working on a database, people can delete fields by mistake and or unintentionally. We want to avoid that from happening. So just adding an emoji like this or any other emoji that you like will ensure that people will not delete those fields. I think those are all my tips for now. And I will pass it back to Aditya.
I think we can now move on to the next part, and that is going to be how do you debug, like how do you detect issues? Like when you run into errors, what's the best way to basically tell like what the error is? So one of the first things you want to do is, let's say that I have a problem with my slug here. So let's say I have a space here. I just intentionally created a space here to cause an error. But like in the real world, you don't know that. You don't know what the problem is. You just, make your changes and you're about to go publish your site. And then you run into a problem and you don't know where the problem is. What I would do is I normally delete everything in the item ID field. So clear records. And then I would publish again. And as you can see, as things get published, they get an item ID assigned to them, but this one didn't. So that tells you that there is a problem with this one. Why is there no item ID assigned to intercom?
I think I changed the status for intercom.
Review.
So could you change that to ready to publish, and then it should be fine.
Okay, perfect. So like the point is that you will not see an item ID for something that had an error, and this way you'd know that the problem was with Okta. Now you can go inside and double check, like, does everything look good? The name looks good. If there is a special character in the name, for example, a comma, it will be a problem. And then you can check the slug. There should not be any spaces or any slashes or commas here. You can only type in what is generally accepted in a URL. So yeah, just make sure this looks good. So that way you fix your issues, and then you can go ahead and publish again. So yeah, that's one way to do it. Another way to do it is what we did earlier. That was when you see an error like this, you go to inspect, and then you go to console. And this is something that you have to face with the current version of Nobull, that it doesn't exactly tell you what the real problem was. It just gives you these generic error messages. So that's why we have to do this. But like with the next version, it's going to be much better to detect what the errors were. So looking at this, field slug unique value is already in database.
We've also got multiple error messages, so we may need to clear out this log and then republish to. So there is a clear button at the top, next to the blue highlight.
Is it this one?
Yes.
Clear console. You're right. Okay.
Okay, and then republish the connect.
I'm gonna
close.
Okay, I'm going to publish again. So these are things you will definitely run into. Like when you manage content here, you will definitely run into errors. So this is a good way to find out what's wrong. And inspect. Okay, so we had 2 errors and we see 2 messages here. And both of them seem to be related to slug. Unique value is already in database. Okay. So
and
I think
just underneath, the message said validation error. So again, to fix that, you would publish your Webflow website. So
right, that's a very good point.
So message under meta said validation error.
Yep, you can see it right here. Okay, so that's the Webflow site published. I think let's try publishing the connect again.
You can also publish your Webflow website from inside of Nobull, but for version 2, we're going to remove that feature because we've received some feedback that anybody who has access to Airtable can then publish the Webflow website, and it's not a very safe thing to do.
Okay, there you go. So it was really just validation error. So we decided to publish the Webflow instance, and that solved it. If you go to the documentation here, you will see a lot of information here that will, again, help you figure out what's going wrong. For example, if you don't name your status correctly, if you name it just archive instead of you missed the D here, then you will find errors. These are your mandatory fields. And then it just mentions what kind of Airtable fields should you use for each Webflow field. So if it's an image, use an attachment. If it's a multi-image, still use an attachment. And you can see it differently if it's Webflow to Airtable or Airtable to Webflow. So that should be helpful. And I think now we're ready to go ahead and share a preview of Nobull v2. If you have some juicy little screenshots to show. And I saw them for the first time today, and I'm super excited.
So these are some screens, not all of it, just the main ones, so to speak. And so this is the first screen that you would see. And with the new version, you can log in with your Finsweet account. So your payment plan would be linked to your Finsweet account. So when you would create a new connect, you would not need to manually save the Webflow API key because that would be stored in the background securely inside your Finsweet account. And then this is the page to create a connect. So the new version will have more field compatibilities, including synced table. We have also put in more categorizations for mandatory fields, and there is a button to create and auto-link these fields. So those buttons are just for the mandatory fields. So in today's demo, you saw Aditya manually creating the CMS status field, the CMS slug and CMS ID field. You would not need to do that with version 2. You can click this button one time and Nobull will auto-create those and link them for you in here. Then, with V2, you will have two types of syncing, two-way sync and mirror sync. We will recommend that you always use two-way sync for production. But for data migration, you can use mirror sync. On today's demo, all the syncs that Aditya performed were mirror syncs. And you could see what happens in mirror sync is that Nobull will sync every single record every single time. We don't want that because it's not efficient. Imagine you have 500 records in one table and then 200 records in another. That's 700 records synced during a mirror sync, which is a lot. So for version 2, if you update one item, we will sync only that one item instead of all the items in your database. So two-way sync is coming. Better UI. So when you saw the screen during a sync, there wasn't a visual indicator, a strong visual indicator as to when a process ended or when a sync was in progress. We are now going to add colors to differentiate if a sync is in progress, if there was an error, or if it was successful. So this is one of such screens. Moving on, in the dashboard, you will get more insight into every connect. So there will be an on and off toggle like you would have in a Zapier to control your two-way sync. Every connect will have the last sync time, the number of records that were processed, and these little buttons that essentially says, so what the first is edit connect, next is go to log, and the third is to delete the connect. and a fourth button to switch over to mirror sync. That is option number 2. Now, connect log. So you would click this button to head into connect log. In here, you will find a record, a log of all records that were synced. And it's going to tell you the number of items that were synced, when that occurred, if it was success, if there's an error message, then what it is, the number of records that failed. You can click onto these accordion boxes to see more information, and inside of that you would see the fields that were synced during a sync. So if the two-way sync will not update every single field, but only those fields that had been updated. So you will see a record of that in here. And then usage. So you can install Nobull on multiple bases and on multiple Airtable workspaces, and all of them can be connected to one Finsweet account. So if you have, let's say, a pro plan which gives you 2000 syncs, that will be spread across all Nobull instances. And in this page, you will find which Airtable base is Nobull installed in, the number of connects in each base, and the number of syncs consumed per connect and the total per base. And that would equate to the syncs consumed entirely for your account. That would then be reset every month as per your billing cycle. So this is a quick preview on what you can expect in Nobull V2. Of course, there are more pages, more screens, but this is a quick overview of that.
So that was it. We hope you liked the content, and I'll see you in the next one.
Thank you everybody for joining. The sneak peek that we showed is of version 2, and please remember that it's subject to change. See you next time.